They turn the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangle rise. Steam Pun Kelly with the sand clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Pun Show. So happy Epstein Day. I watched the press conference with all the victims, and I was really kind of taken back to the when the sentencing of Larry Nassar happened, and the victims of Nassar testified. And I just kind of remember, I was just thinking about the same thing. Sorry, I got a little issue here. So, yeah, it took me back to that. And I hope that someday we can get to the point where we don't have cover-ups like with Nassar and Epstein, or like whatever, like with what happened in Jim Jordan, or in Ohio with Jim Jordan, helping that cover up. Like, even beyond the politics of it, we have to remember these are real people, real victims that have suffered real things. And I was struck as the women were testifying today, that each one of them was, saying this is not about politics. And I think we have made this into such a political thing. And if Trump did anything, Trump should go to jail. And if Clinton did anything, Clinton should go to jail. And anybody that did anything should go to jail. But it shouldn't just be like the political aspect of things, well, if there was anything in there, Biden would have done it, would have, just stop with all that. Biden was wrong to not release them. Biden was wrong to not release them. He was wrong to not release them before. Now it's that he didn't release them means that there was nothing in them. And it's just, there's this weirdo thinking that MAGA is, everything has got to be weirdo. They can't think, just everything has to be in terms of Trump to them. It can't just be, hey, rape is wrong, and that's it. That's the end of the story. That's that whole story. Raping children is bad. That can't be the be all and end all of the discussion with these clowns. But rape is wrong. It's always wrong. It's wrong if Trump does it. It's wrong if Clinton does it. It's wrong if Prince Andrew does it. It's wrong if Humpty Dumpty does it. I don't care who you're talking about. Sorry, I've got a weird situation going on with my laptop setup here. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that really quick. If you can watch it on YouTube or something, I suggest watching it, because I think seeing the women made me realize again how much this is about them and not about Trump. It's about the victims and the victims getting justice. It's not about the politics. It's not about ruining Trump's presidency. It's not about the Democrats hoaxing or whatever. It's about the women getting justice. These were girls that were trafficked. Just little girls. 14, 15-year-old girls. And I don't know. I mean, like, have you ever known a 14 or 15-year-old girl? I mean, like acting like they were, like basically women or whatever is just insane. I get so tired of that kind of nonsense. Oh, they were women. They just, they knew what they had, forget that. Okay, so I wanted to touch on that real quick, and then I wanted to touch on right now the butthead is on the TV and he's talking to the Saudi crown prince that, saws up journalists into little tiny pieces. And I know that, Biden recognized him too and had the fist bump, and made me mad when Biden did it. Like, I think that sawing journalists into little pieces is wrong. And I don't think that you should be able to get to a certain point where you have enough power that it becomes okay. But clearly that's what's happened. If you have enough money, then you can sit there and Donald Trump's little gold plated Oval Office and joke and smile and laugh, even though you sawed up a journalist into little pieces because they said things you didn't like. All right, so we've got some comments here. Sorry. Hi, Fancy Pants. Find out what Agent Red Girl is. Okay, I'll look it up. The only one raping anything here is you. No, honestly, I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. I haven't ever raped anybody. And yes, there were children raped with Epstein's operation. I didn't say anybody who raped anyone, but they were raped. It's like such a why even have the take like that? Like, why are you defending it? Then OP, I don't know what that means. Quick, flag. And then you. Okay, I don't know what's going on with all this. So okay, the first, sawing people into pieces is bad, and raping little girls is bad. So the next thing I want to talk about, this will be the first main thing I want to talk about today, is Lindsay Halligan and this court case. Which, if for those of you that don't know, she is the prosecutor prosecuting James Comey after the Comey case. After the previous prosecutor said, "No, I don't want to bring charges against him. There's not enough evidence," and then Trump fired the previous prosecutor and put his former defense attorney in the position, even though she had no experience being a prosecutor at all, had never prosecuted a case. And she went in there, and within 3 days, she filed charges with the grand jury and got an indictment. These comments are weird. So, got an indictment, and now the case is brought before a judge. The judge looked at the case, and there were, we'll just say, a few minor problems with that. Some of the one reporter even said it is the worst case she had ever seen. The judge actually said it was the worst case he had ever seen. So I'm going to go through and outline exactly what was wrong with it and what the issues were with it, that people were like, so not just like that it was bad, but it was so bad that they had to comment on how bad it was. Like, it was bad. So we're going to, first of all, just case overview. I'll just go through this. I'm switching screens, so if there's more weird comments, I won't see them until I come back over here. First of all, the case overview. Magistrate Judge William Patrick's assessment: a disturbing pattern of profound investigative missteps that led an FBI agent and a prosecutor to potentially undermine the integrity of the grand jury proceeding. So James Comey, the former FBI director, was the defendant. He's been accused of lying under oath to the Senate. Lindsay Halligan is the prosecutor. She's the interim U.S. attorney. She wasn't appointed by the Senate. We'll get to that in a minute because that could be problematic too. The judge was William Patrick. The district judge was Michael Nakamoff. He's the one overseeing the case. And then there's another judge with another review, Cameron McGowan Curry, who there's another challenge to the case regarding the legitimacy of Halligan, when I'll get to in a minute. Eric Seibert was the previous attorney. He retired on September 19th under pressure because he was told, I want to bring these, Trump wanted to have these charges brought against Comey before the statute of limitations expired. So then he appointed Halligan as interim U.S. attorney, and 3 days later, she indicted Comey. Then, since then, Letitia James has been indicted, and the judge criticized indict first, investigate second. And he wrote a 24-page scathing ruling, and I'm going to go over here what the issues were. First of all, there were some pretty important legal issues. Judge Fitzpatrick identified at least two fundamental and highly prejudicial misstatements of law that could compromise the integrity of the grand jury process. The first was a Fifth Amendment violation, that Comey would have to testify at a trial to win his case. Halligan implied that to the grand jury. And the Fifth Amendment actually does the opposite. It guarantees, I plead the Fifth. Anybody knows what the Fifth Amendment is. I don't see how anybody that actually has a law degree could not know that you can't be compelled to testify against yourself at trial. But she implied that he could, and then if he didn't, then that could be inferred against him by the jury. Which is 180 degrees the opposite of true. I do not know how somebody passed their law bar without knowing what you learned in high school. The judge said the prosecutor's statement ignores the foundational rule of law that if Mr. Comey exercised his right to not testify, the jury could draw no negative inference from that decision. This may have led grand jurors to believe the burden shifts to Mr. Comey to explain away the government's evidence rather than the government proving the guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. So she shifted to the grand jury. She's implied that Comey has to prove he's innocent, not that the government has to prove he's guilty. Then when you factor that in with this second major issue, she said the grand jury didn't need to rely on the evidence before them because the government had more and better evidence that would be presented at trial. Okay. So she's you're going to indict him. You can indict him based on the evidence we're going to have. And then if the evidence we're going to have, he has to prove he's innocent rather than we have to prove our case. That is really upside down. Two of the most foundational aspects of criminal law, that you have a right to the presumption of innocence and that you can't be made to testify against yourself. Those two things she got wrong. These are things you should know just watching any legal show on TV. Even Law and Order gets that one right. That is so foundational. You should know that in fifth grade, and she has a law degree. Her legal evidence consisted of, trust me, bro. That was her case to the grand jury. Well, sort of. There's some other things that she presented too, but those become problematic also, and I'll get into that. But just the very fact that she got the presumption of innocence and the Fifth Amendment wrong That's pretty problematic for somebody that actually has a law degree. So the second thing she got were Fourth Amendment violations and tainted evidence. Okay. So first, she used an old search warrant without authorization. What she did is the DOJ accessed evidence seized from FBI search warrants executed in 2019 and 2020 against Daniel Richman, Comey's former attorney, during a different leak investigation that never resulted in charges. So they used evidence from another case as evidence against Comey. They didn't get a warrant or any, like they used that based on a warrant in another case and not a warrant against Comey. That's illegal. You can't do that. And we'll get more into that later, like, or into the actual evidence. But under longstanding Fourth Amendment precedent, the government may search for and seize only those materials expressly authorized by the terms of a search warrant issued in connection with specific predicate offenses. So, like, you can't use a search warrant against, Bobby Simmons and then find something against Harold Roebuck and then prosecute Harold Roebuck based on that warrant. You'd have to get a different warrant for that. The DOJ failed to make time to properly filter out the confidential attorney-client communications before charging Comey. That's an additional concern. Okay, then the second thing, this is about the attorney-client privilege violations. An FBI agent testified to the grand jury after reviewing potentially privileged information between Comey and his attorney, Daniel Richman. Judge Patrick called this highly irregular and a radical departure from past DOJ practice. Material that could have been protected by attorney-client privilege may have been exposed to the grand jury, potentially constraining the entire proceeding. And this illegal testimony regarding illegally obtained evidence was the only witness testimony that was presented to the grand jury. And then the rest of the evidence was, trust me, bro. I'm starting to see some reasons why this, might get thrown out. On the same day Comey was indicted, an FBI agent warned others at the FBI about using Richman's potentially tainted data. So they also knew this data was tainted. She knowingly had this guy present tainted data, or tainted data, this tainted testimony. She had just been warned that day, you can't do this. But the statute of limitations was set to expire. So she's like, oh, no, we've got to rush and do this now. So the judge's overall assessment, the nature and circumstances surrounding the government's potential violations of the Fourth Amendment and court orders established a reasonable basis to question whether the government's conduct was willful or in reckless disregard of the law. So she used illegally obtained data through an illegal testimony, implied that she had more evidence later, that Comey would have to disprove her evidence in the court and that the jury should use that, and that if Comey didn't use it, then they should be able to take that his lack of testimony, which was hypothetical, was a negative against him. So all kinds of just like bedrock constitutional issues here. These aren't like technicalities. These are basic foundational constitutional rights that she's just totally butchering. Then there were 2 hours of the grand jury proceeding for which there is no transcript or audio recording. We don't have any idea what happened during those 2 hours. That's an issue. And yes, the grand jury proceedings should be secret from the public, but they shouldn't be secret from the defense. Like, the defense has a right to know what happened in the grand jury. Don't know. The DOJ says that's the time period when the jurors were deliberating behind closed doors, which could not be included in a transcription. But the judge found that explanation insufficient and noted that the materials were incomplete. She said sections of the transcript appear to be missing. Since the transcripts and everything is redacted, it's kind of hard to know exactly what happened. But the judge did not find the explanation sufficient. And this is the other part of what happened. Halligan initially sought a 3-count indictment. The grand jury rejected one of the 3 counts. 7 minutes later, she presented the 2-count indictment, was prepared and signed. So how did she get that indictment typed up, signed, and approved by the grand jury in 7 minutes? It's unclear whether the final 2-count indictment that was filed in court was actually presented to the grand jury for their deliberation and approval. So that has another problem. Like, did the grand jury actually indict, even see the indictment for which Comey was indicted? So we have problems with the only witness. We have problems with the evidence. We have the problems with the grand jury instructions that were not only just unconstitutional, they were the opposite of constitutional. And then we're still not done. Whether or not she's even legally appointed, this is the other case. There's an 120-day rule where an interim U.S. attorney can serve for 120 days. But after that 120 days, you can't just refill it for another 120 days. So Seibert was appointed interim U.S. attorney. He served 120 days. The district judge used their independent authority to retain Seibert. But Seibert resigned after Trump's pressure, then Halligan appointed by the Attorney General Pam Bondi. So the question is, does Halligan's appointment restart the clock? Because there still hasn't been a Senate-approved Attorney General in that spot. And you need to fill it with the Senate-approved Attorney General. The Comey defense says it doesn't. The DOJ says it does. And they say, like, the Halligan defense is that there's nothing in the statute explicitly that states it or implies it, but the very existence of the 120 days implies it. Like, implies that the idea is that you have to have somebody Senate approved within that 120 days. Otherwise, what's even the point of having the 120-day limit? So this is a separate case, regarding the thing, but this is a separate case being heard by a separate judge. So Fitzpatrick said the DOJ must turn over all grand jury materials to Comey's defense team, including transcripts, audio recordings, and all evidence presented. And so there's a few cases. One, the case could be dismissed based on government misconduct. I think that is certainly possible and probable. The statute of limitations expired, so the case cannot be refiled if dismissed. Then it could also be dismissed if Judge Curry rules Halligan was not lawfully serving as the U.S. attorney. The indictment is void. And the irony of this one is that part of the legal reasoning behind this case is actually Cannon throwing out the documents case brought by Jack Smith, saying that Jack Smith wasn't lawfully serving as a U.S. attorney. Like, Jack Smith had not been Senate appointed. Of course, Jack Smith was not a U.S. attorney. He wasn't acting as a U.S. attorney. He was acting as a special counsel, so it's different. But that means if it applies to him, it should apply to Halligan. It doesn't mean that if it applies to Halligan, it applies to Smith. The standard for Halligan, since she's a U.S. attorney, should be higher. Even if the case proceeds, core evidence obtained through improper searches may be suppressed, gutting the prosecution. So even if it were to go, the sketchy evidence that they gave, the illegal evidence that they gave to the grand jury, which was all the evidence they had, there's no evidence left. So the extra evidence is, oh, we're going to have a good case by then. Like, no, they won't. It's going to be even worse than what they got the DOJ on. And here's the thing. The reason that they don't have a good case and the reason they don't have good evidence is because he didn't do it. Like, he's innocent. He is not guilty. He did not do the thing which they are charging him with. He did not lie to the Senate. The whole case is even based on actual case is a lie. They're saying that he lied to the Senate, but he actually told the truth to the Senate, and the case revolves around the confusion over two different people named Andrew. Okay. So the discovery proposal was rejected. Oh, these are other judicial rebukes. So she was rebuked for her discovery. Okay, saying it would cause needle. I didn't look into that, so I don't know what that. The day before Comey's major motions were due, Halligan's team requested an expedited ruling on the filter protocol for handling sensitive evidence. Judge Nakamoff response rejected the request, noting the government's delay was its own fault. Oh my goodness. She wanted to have an expedited ruling based on her own incompetence, or the government's own incompetence. I guess she had only been there for 3 days, but I think it's because the other lawyer had decided that there was nothing to prosecute. So now you've got, like, multiple judges have questioned Halligan's approach to the case, and I don't think that it's going to. I think that this thing is going to get thrown out of court really soon. But, like, when you put it all together, you had an illegally appointed attorney bringing up unconstitutional charges against an opponent, giving the grand jury unconstitutional instruction, and using illegally obtained evidence, and using witness that was a legal witness testimony to get the indictment. And then the indictment evidence was basically, trust me, bro, I'll have more evidence at trial. So this is why I can see people going, this is the worst case I've ever seen. That if there was anything botchable, it was botched. It is it is just insanely incompetent. And this is why you don't have insurance lawyers acting as U.S. attorneys. Like, usually you don't even, like, you don't have entry level prosecutors as U.S. attorneys. This is like higher up. It's not like an assistant attorney or something like that, where they're learning the ropes or something. This is just like when, you know, the boss's son comes in and takes over the business. And this is coming from the DEI administration. DEI is bad. It should just be merit. She has no merit. She literally does not have merit. That's not even a controversial statement. Halligan had never prosecuted a case. She had no business. She has no business in that role, which is why nobody's going, like, why Trump doesn't want to have it go before the Senate. Because even the Senate, even the Republicans stands in the Senate know this is a ridiculous appointment. All right, so that's that one. I'm going to go now to, this is something I think that maybe has been, like, there's been chatter, but I don't think enough attention has been put on just how corrupt Trump's second term has been and how much money he is making off of this. And in addition, how much money he's making at the expense of taxpayers. He's sitting there, they're like literally stopping school lunches, and they're stopping SNAP benefits, and they're ready to cancel the ACA and stuff like that because the government can't spend all this money. But at the same time, he's sitting there just taking the taxpayers for a $2 trillion ride, or $2 billion ride. All right, so I'm going to go through some of the money that he has made in his second term so far, and through either corrupt fundraising endeavors or through his tying his businesses to his policies, and show he's made over $4 billion off of his second term. And he has cost U.S. taxpayers another couple of billion. So I'm going to go through that. This is the corruption that is Donald Trump. First, his presidential library. He's already raised $500 million for his presidential library. Some of this is coming from his lawsuits of media organizations. Like the Meta settlement, he got 22 million. Paramount settlement, he got 16 million. ABC News, he got 15 million. And then there's other donations for 447 million. And remember, those settlements were not settled because he was winning on the legal issues. They were making those settlements because he was threatening to deny them like mergers and whatnot. He was threatening to damage their business, which would cost them more money than the settlement. So they buckled and caved. Every one of those places buckled and caved. He didn't have a case against them. If it had gone to court, they would have won going away. If he wasn't president, there's no way they would have lost. But they settled because he used the power of the government against them to leverage them into compromising. So that he's got $500 million and counting. His crypto ventures, his income from World Liberty financial token sales and Trump meme coin. Over the first half of 2025, President family receives 75% of the WLFI token sales. The Trump meme coin fees are $320 million. The revenue around 482 million. From that, his family gets a 75% share, which means that he makes about 5 billion. Or and he's still got, I'm sorry, he makes 802 million and he's got like 5 billion. The Trump family has like 5 billion in these crypto coin value. And I think there was something to do with one of these guys getting a pardon, right? I didn't include that here, but or I think maybe that's later. This is like, oh, but he doesn't take a presidential salary. He makes more money off of his scams in one day than his presidential salary covers in 1 year. Like, this is more than $2 million a day, right? Like, even just between these two things, it's like $4 million a day. His presidential salary is $400,000 a year. He makes more in 1 day off of his scams than his entire 4-year salary comprises. So don't tell me he donates the money to charity. Even if he does, when, he probably donates it to his own charity and then uses it to buy paintings of himself. He's got another 239 million that he raised off of his inauguration. The previous record was his, which was only 107 million. Joe Biden was able to have an inauguration with a lot less money. Of course, that was, admittedly during COVID. Record-breaking inauguration fundraising, more than double previous record, 60% from 130 plus 7-figure donations. Excess goes to library. So now we're up to like 1.5 billion that he's raised. Then the ballroom is his new thing, which I guess he's collecting the money but not paying the contractor that destroyed half the White House. And this has been about as opaque can be. He talks about how transparent he is. I mean, I've seen brick walls more transparent than his presidency. He is not being transparent. Who's giving this $200 million? What is it being spent on? Where's the invoices? Why is this contractor suing you for not even paying him to destroy the old one? There's the $400 million plane from Qatar that he says, oh, this was a donation to the, to the government, not to Donald Trump. But Donald Trump's the only one that's ever going to fly on it. We'll get to it in a second, but the retrofitting is something that we pay for, which is more money. He's going to be flying around on a $1 billion plus airplane that he got for free. And then there's the Trump media, which he didn't even have anything to do with this. They just came up with this pump and dump stock, gave him a 52% of the shares because they know if he had shares, then other people would buy it. He owns 52% of Trump Media and Technology Group, posted by GJT before a tariff pause, raising market manipulation concerns. So he's using his power as president to pump up his own stocks. He's made $883,000 off that stock this year. So here's like kind of he's made $2 billion off of Trump media. It's $400 million off the plane, $200 million off the ballroom, $239 million off his inauguration, $500 million off the presidential library, and $802 million off of the crypto So this is we'll just go to the next tab. So now what's this costing the taxpayers? Believe it or not, this is actually costing the taxpayers money. We are losing money so he can make $4 billion. All right. So how does that work? First of all, the Cutter plane, the retrofit, could cost up to $1 billion. And to pay for this, they're not even including that in the budget. They're taking money from the nuclear missile programs, which then has to be replaced, right? So that could cost up to $1 billion, and we will never know because it's classified. But he's going to be flying around in this $1 billion plane that was given to him by Qatar. And we're supposed to believe that's not a violation of the Emoluments Clause. And what are the taxpayers paying for? All of it. We're paying for all of that retrofitting. We can't afford to buy kids' school lunches, but we can afford to buy Donald Trump a $1 billion airplane, or upgrade his $1 billion airplane that he got for free. So Senator Tammy Buckworth puts it this way: far from saving money, this unconstitutional action will force taxpayers to waste over $1 billion to overhaul this particular aircraft when we currently have not one, but two fully operational Air Force One aircraft. So this is just some of the things that we are taking money from: food stamps, federal school lunch program, NIH medical research, veterans health care. These are all things we don't have money for. So they were cut in the big, beautiful bill. But they're all things we have money for Trump's personal $1 billion airplane. Then that's not the only place that the taxpayers are losing money. So this is going into his pardons. So he has all these people he pardoned, right? And then they're paying like $1 million to charity, to one of his inauguration fund, or to the ballroom, and all that kind of stuff. And then they get pardoned. Well, Trevor Milton, the Nikola founder, convicted of fraud. He and his wife donated $1.8 million to Trump committees before he was pardoned, saved him from a 4-year sentence and a $676 million restitution to defrauded shareholders. So the victims of his crime do not get reimbursed because he got pardoned. But Donald Trump got his $1.8 million. The total cost of his pardons, $1.3 billion. That's the total cost to the shareholders and taxpayers and whatnot. James Galenas, that's going to cost us $84 million. He was a serial fraudster who defrauded union pension funds and the Native American tribe because Republican witnesses became Republican witness against Biden, pardoned by Trump. So these union workers and Native Americans are out their union pension because of this pardon and because he became a witness against Biden. You got Todd and Julie Chrisley. I remember when their crappy show was on TV, and I would never watch it, but I'd always see the promos during basketball games and just thought, what kind of morally bankrupt person would want to watch this show? But anyway, they were convicted of bank fraud and tax evasion. They got forgiven a $22 million debt to the U.S. government. Todd bragged the Fed got effed and went shopping 12 hours after release. This is like supposed to be one of those Christian people. Paul Welzak, He was a nursing home executive who stole from employees' paychecks. His mother donated $1 million to Trump at Mar-a-Lago 3 weeks before the pardon. And so that pension, or that those paychecks that he was supposed to repay, $4.4 million in wage theft that just got forgiven. So these are real victims here, right? These are shareholders. These are pension holders. These are taxpayers. These are employees. These are people that like did their job and worked and didn't get paid what they were supposed to get paid. The January 6th defendants that did $3 million worth of damage, they don't have to pay back their damage anymore. That's $2.6 million wiped out. Then the other pardons from white-collar criminal fraudsters and corrupt politicians, including Ross Ulbricht, Carlos Watson, and many others. That's another $510 million in restitution or taxes that were wiped out. So that's $1.3 billion. So who lost out? The defrauded shareholders, union workers, Native American tribe, U.S. taxpayers, nursing home employees, police officers assaulted on January 6th, who some of that money was supposed to be for their restitution, including the guy that lost an eye, and taxpayers. So this is what you get for a pardon. And I remember in the case where they heard before the Supreme Court, it was used as an outlandish example of what the president could do if you just gave him, immunity for any official act. Like people were saying, like even this, I can't remember which one it was, but even one of the judges asked, well, he could just sell pardons if you're saying this. And basically they said, yeah, he could. And Donald Trump heard that and he got ideas. And so he's been just selling people pardons. And he's been using that money to go to these charitable foundations that are actually, he's the charity. And you know the best part of all this? He doesn't have to pay taxes on any of it. Well, other than the crypto income, he's technically supposed to pay taxes on that. And they're trying to change that law. So he wants to get $4 billion out of tax-free income based on him leveraging the government for his personal cash machine, leveraging it to force media companies to pay money for telling the truth about him, or just giving money to anybody that's willing to give him $1 million. He'll buy, that's the going price apparently for a pardon, about $1 million. It doesn't matter who your victims are. If you got $1 million, fork it over. That's not even getting into the drug dealers and whatnot. Okay. So yeah, I kind of have some issues with that. Okay, so now let's go into the next thing I wanted to talk about, which is good old RFK Jr. And this is another one where it's been like the trickle effect. And like there's just a steady like raindrop, like rainfall on the roof of incompetence after incompetence after incompetence. So I wanted to put together a dashboard that showed exactly how insane it has gotten when you start putting it all together. And I will say, like, I think that there are some possibilities of things that could be positive with him. Um, like I like the like I think that we should eat healthier as a country. I don't think that the way to sell that message is to show yourself eating with the president at McDonald's. I don't think that uh, getting Coke to switch, or even I don't even think they got Coke to switch to from corn syrup to cane sugar is the way to do that. I think if you know drinking Coke with cane sugar is still unhealthy. It's just not as unhealthy. I don't think that the idea of taking weight loss drugs to counter the fact that you have to eat processed food because you live in a food desert. I don't think that's the answer. He says he's all against processed food, but then he does nothing to help people in food deserts get real food. He just helps them to lose weight through weight loss drugs after he takes away their Medicaid, after the Republicans take away their Medicaid and ACA benefits. So I don't know how they're gonna. Anyway, the whole thing is just insane. I suppose you can say that they can get it on, the Trump pharmacy, whatever thing it is. But then how do they get the doctor to subscribe it? They can't afford to see a doctor. So the whole is just insane. But here we are. So let's take a look at his record as Secretary of Health and Human Services and what some of his controversies are. He's got 24 documented issues, like actual real things. He's been in office for like 8 months. That's like 3 a month. That's like almost 1 a week. 8 categories of concern, 3 measles deaths, and over 1,000 employees that have called for his resignation. So first, let's look at his vaccine policy. He dismantled the CDC Advisory Committee. He dismissed members of the Advisory Committee on Immunizing Independent Vaccine Experts with people critical or lacking expertise in vaccines, canceled public ACIP meetings, and replaced them with closed-door meetings. And this is like one of the real damaging things that have come from the whole MAGA movement is disinformation regarding vaccines, regarding COVID vaccines, regarding mRNA vaccines, regarding this thing they call vaccine injuries, which vaccine injuries do happen, but they do not happen on the scale that the Republicans would want you to believe. They happen, like I think there were like 23 or something the last I checked. Actual documented valid vaccine injuries in relation to the COVID vaccine out of the millions of lives they saved. And yes, COVID vaccines really did save lives. This idea that either a vaccine has to make sure that nobody ever gets the disease ever again, or it doesn't work, like this kind of binary way of working versus not working, is a complete misrepresentation of how facts work. The idea that you should only ever have to get one shot of a vaccine or it's not real, that's bogus. Like there's just so many things from the anti-vax community that have leaked into the regular mainstream consciousness. And now the issue is you've got things like the CDC that are publishing this and saying this. And here's a real damage that can come from this is for a while I worked in a safety and I worked for an AI in safety. And that meant, like, I would look at the sensitivity and safety is what it was called. And I would look at like issues like, do vaccines work? And I would help train the AI to give an honest answer about that, but not like a politically biased one, but one that was safe, like to keep the AI from being manipulated by bad actors into saying unhealthy things, right? Saying things that could get people killed. Ironically, I got COVID while I was doing this job. It's the only time I've gotten it. Anyway, they had certain websites and certain sources that we would use to vindicate, like to vindicate positions. One of those was the CDC. But now something that would have been used to debunk junk science is now being used to support junk science. So when you go to the AI and you ask it whether something is valid or not, they're going to the CDC. They're pulling up this junk science being spit out by RFK Jr.'s little junk science committee, and you're being told that this junk science is actually the real truth. Then other sources would be like, legitimate news sources. And when I say legitimate news sources, like either Fox or MSNBC could be used, CNN could be used, the Washington Post, the New York Times, like actual news sources. Although, some people could question whether some of those might have biases or not. But when I'm taught, that's in contrast to things like the willfully distorting the news sources. But those sources would cite like the CDC as their source. And so it's kind of like the same thing, right? You're just still quoting the CDC, it's just once removed. And so even when you're like looking at AI and trying to fact check these things, the thing is now you don't have a way to fact check the source of the facts. You have, I guess, to put it this way, alternative facts now are being considered the valid facts, and actual facts are being considered the junk science. And that's an issue. Like, I have a problem with that. Like, I really want to know if my vaccine works, if the vaccine is going to save my child's life. And it's not just about the mRNA vaccines. It's about, do vaccines cause autism? No, they don't. And there's like study after study after study. But now you have a guy who is intent on proving that vaccines cause autism in spite of what the science says. And he's touting that as he's the one supporting the science. So anyway, he's defunded mRNA research, which mRNA research is huge. It's saved millions of lives during the pandemic worldwide. It's saved millions and millions of lives. And it's got so many other applications. But now, the whole thing, he canceled $500 million in contracts from mRNA vaccine development, terminating 22 research projects with universities and pharmaceutical companies, including Pfizer, Moderna. Emory University falsely claimed mRNA vaccines are ineffective and unsafe. And they'll just criticize this and they'll say, oh, it's just about big pharma. And it's like, why is it that capitalism is awesome when you're supporting Elon Musk, but if a pharmaceutical company invest money in something that saves lives, then all of a sudden it's an issue. And the people that like, oh, well, just follow the money. And then they have these YouTube channels where they're saying just follow the money. And in the middle of their thing, they keep stopping and selling their food supplement that is going to, work for you not having cancer, or their special super high grade vitamins that are going to stop you from having cancer. They're making money off of telling you to follow the money. Why follow the money of the pharmaceutical companies and not the money of the people telling you not to listen to the pharmaceutical companies? There seems to be a bit of a double standard there. So we removed COVID vaccine recommendations, which that means that your insurance company might not cover it anymore. You can say, well, it's just about freedom of choice. What happened to freedom of choice? Now people that choose to get the vaccine cannot have access to it unless they have money. They no longer have a choice to get the vaccine. If you want to say people shouldn't have to get the vaccine, that's fine. I have all kinds of issues with it because I think that there is such a thing as herd immunity. And George Washington would have also had issues with it. He made his soldiers get a vaccine for smallpox when it was an experimental vaccine. Guess what? He saved a bunch of lives doing it. We probably wouldn't have a country if he had not had a vaccine mandate. If you think about it. If our soldiers had died, we would have lost the revolution. But he saved soldiers' lives by mandating they get the smallpox vaccine. And then he rescinded the COVID-19 vaccine emergency use authorizations without providing data or methods used to reach the decision. He reduced public access to vaccines without transparent scientific justification, which is like a common theme you find with these guys. As much as they talk about being transparent, nothing they do is transparent. They're as transparent as a board. All right, so does this have any consequences? Yes. There's been nearly 500 cases in Texas alone of the measles. Because again, he's not just attacking COVID vaccines. He's attacking all vaccines. And he's like MMR and blah, blah, blah. And it's all junk science. It's all nonsense. He is not credible. So there's been the biggest measles outbreaks. I think we've had the most measles since like the 90s. Then while there was this huge case or this huge measles outbreak in Texas with over 500 cases or nearly 500 cases spreading to multiple states, Kennedy minimized severity. He gave the incorrect death toll. He falsely claimed hospitalizations were mainly for quarantine, and he emphasized vitamin A treatment over vaccination. Said the outbreak was not unusual when experts disagreed. And even there were people that were coming into the hospital with vitamin A overdoses because they were taking his advice. In all, 3 people died. 2 of them were unvaccinated children in Texas. The other one was an adult in New Mexico. They were all unvaccinated. They were the first measles death in the U.S. since 2015. The outbreak spread to New Mexico, Oklahoma, Kansas, and Mexico. Do you think this is just a coincidence that all of a sudden all this stuff is happening after the in the last 5 years, they've been amping up this anti-vax thing more and more. People aren't getting their kids vaccinated. Their kids are getting things that they didn't used to get. I have a brother-in-law who's an anti-vaxxer. All his kids got whooping cough. Didn't change their mind. Okay. So he redeployed CDC teams during crisis. So during the measles crisis, he announced CDC employees were redeployed from the Texas measles outbreak response, not to the response, but from the response. So they're having a measles outbreak, and he's like, okay, let's take out the people that are most qualified to handle it and redeploy them somewhere else. And he emphasized the alternative treatment over vaccination. He published an edit. He even wrote a stupid article emphasizing vitamin A, cod liver oil, and steroids for measles treatment. This has no basis in science at all. He said vaccination decision is personal and downplayed the vaccination as a prevention strategy. And here's the thing. You know who didn't get to make a personal decision about getting vaccinated? Those 2 kids in Texas that died. And they're never going to make another personal decision again because they're dead, because their parents let them die, because their parents listen to people like RFK Jr. People like RFK Jr. should not be giving medical advice. And I'm not saying that in a personal way. You know who should be giving advice on immunizations? People that are experts on immunizations. So he's been so incompetent. He fired thousands of HSS employees, including experienced public health professionals. Most notably, fired newly confirmed CDC director Susan Menares after only 1 month of refusing to rubber stamp unscientific, reckless directives. And I think this was about, there was a report about super processed foods, and she did not just go along with it. She went with the science and not with what his report said. This is the one I believe that was like the AI one that was just riddled with errors and was just totally just nonsensical. So she didn't want to sign her name to that. So she got fired. And the thing is, when you're not just putting idiots in charge. The people that know what they're talking about are being fired or leaving. You're losing this expertise. So and then as you lose that, you're going to fill it with more idiot slots. This loss of institutional knowledge and expertise is really, really important. Like, I don't think we know how important it is. I can't imagine going through another case of, like another instance of something like COVID with the current idiots running the CDC and DHHS. Do you really think that Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. are ready to handle something like that? He fired the Senate confirmed CD. Okay. And he replaced independent vaccine experts with political appointees and vaccine critics on key advisory committees. He boosted supporters of debunked vaccine autism theories. He's really been like locked in on this whole vaccine thing. A vaccine causes autism, which is, again, it's just been debunked 6 ways to Sunday. But he's putting in quacks in place of people that know what they're talking about. All right. So then there's his handling of mental health and substance abuse. He fired staff and attempted to eliminate the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, the federal responsibilities for supporting states with overdose prevention and mental health services. See, this is one of the things that I find unreconcilable. Like, On the one hand, you have an administration that is allegedly so concerned about the overdose epidemic that we're killing people on the high seas under suspicion that they might be trafficking drugs. On the other hand, you're firing people that are literally the most qualified to deal with people with drug problems and prevent drug overdoses. Psychiatrists say this undermines overdose prevention efforts during addiction crisis. Then his attack on psychiatric medications. This is like, so the MAHA report, Make America Healthy Again, report specifically misrepresents the data on psychotropic medications, really ignoring the full body of the scientific literature, according to psychiatrists. Increased stigma around mental health treatment. Medical professions warn this discourages evidence-based health treatment. And so it's like, you always see these people that, like there's been this demonization of mental health drugs. And it's like every time there's a mass shooting and the guy is on mental health drugs, then it's like, oh, see, he was on medical health drugs and that's why he did the shooting. It's like maybe he had mental health problems and that's why he was on mental health drugs, and the mental health problems are why he did the shooting. Like, the thinking skills of a MAGA are like that of a oxygen-starved gerbil. Like, they cannot think past their own stupidity. So then there's the scientific integrity. Like, he's keeps saying, well, we're the gold level silence and our science now. And it's not. The National Review report reported Kennedy promised gold standard science, but delivered cherry-picked science, systemically ignored scientific consensus and peer-reviewed research. He does this consistently. He will, like the autism and aspirin thing, like there's actual reports that debunk the Tylenol autism link. There's reports that actually debunk that over and over again. There was one study that came out that had a link, but then another study reviewed that link and found out, if we look at their siblings and the same thing, then there's no link. And here, this is another one of those same things that I was just talking about, where you can have the same thing causes two different things, right? So the same fetal complications that can cause a mother pain, cause a mother fever and headaches, and cause her to take Tylenol can also cause autism. So the mother that is going through a pregnancy and has an autistic child is also taking Tylenol. That does not mean she's taking Tylenol, and that's why she has autism. Do you follow? The underlying condition is causing her to take Tylenol and causing autism. So then he mandated political review of research. And this is where it gets kind of weird. Like, he wants to say that the research is political, but actually it's only political in the sense that it disagrees with his politics. So he's politicizing it by saying it's political. So, like, one of the things he does is he talks about DEI. A lot of this is DEI. And so, like, there's a study that there's a study that he talked about that trans people have a correlation with dementia, right? So there was a study that was being done to understand the link between trans people and dementia. And He called that a DEI study and he canceled the research. Sometimes certain groups of people are more tied to a certain condition, and it has nothing to do with politics. And I'll give you a perfect example: sickle cell anemia. For whatever reason, Black people are more prone to sickle cell anemia. It's almost exclusively disease associated with Black people. And, you get to, there's some other things that are like maybe just like West African tribes have a certain connection to some things. And I think LGBTQ like lesbians have birth problems that non-lesbians don't. So when you study those things, you're finding out why does this exist in this group of people, not in this group of people. He would call that a DEI study. And so basically anything that does not exclusively include white cisgender straight people, to him, is political. And sometimes it's not, sometimes there can be a difference in how things are treated because of medical bias. Like, why do Black people get less pain medication than white people? Could there be a medical bias there? There's always, like, oh, well, Black people can suffer more for some reason. That is entrenched in our medical society. There are women, are more likely to be diagnosed with like imaginary diseases, like where, oh, that's just in your head. Women are taken less seriously by doctors. Why is that? There are real things that we need to look at and evaluate in terms of, is there bias in our medicine, is one thing that really needs to be reviewed. If you don't see race, how can you see racism? If you don't see sex, how can you see sexism? Like, these are real things that actually exist. If you don't look for bias, how can you ever see bias? Right? Then there's also the possibility that these are things that are unique to the condition. Like sickle cell anemia being among Black people has nothing to do with medical bias. It has to do with Black people are more susceptible to it. So these things need to be researched. Is this a medical bias, or is this an actual physical bias? Is there a reason that trans people are more likely to have dementia, or is there something else? Those are things that benefit society as a whole to know about. So he flips that on his head and says, oh, you're just, like somehow you're just pro-trans people if you're trying to find out why is there this relationship between dementia and trans people. Not saying all trans people have dementia, just want to clarify that. Trans people are more likely to have dementia. I think like twice as likely. So he failed to respond to the CDC shooting at all because guns are the good guys in the Republican Party, right? The shooter was motivated by anti-vaccine sentiment. Can you imagine if like some trans person shot up the Pam Bondi's office or something? Like how much would come out of that? But yeah, a shooter motivated by anti-vaccine sentiment goes and shoots up a CDC office. Didn't hear all this stuff about we need to stop the rhetoric, did we? How come we didn't hear the rhetoric about, or how come we didn't hear the talking points about how we need to back away from the rhetoric, the anti-vax rhetoric, after the CDC was shut up? Where was the Secretary of Health and Human Services when that happened? And so, of course, if you work for the man, you're probably not all that inspired. So over 1,000 current and former DHHS employees signed a letter calling for Kennedy's resignation, citing endangerment of U.S. health. Many signed anonymously, fearing retaliation, which, I mean, can you blame them? So, and this is not like, this doesn't happen for any cabinet secretary. The congressional and political response, even you're starting to see Republicans start to bend, like Bill Cassidy expressed concerns and called for oversight. Senator Dick Durbin called him dangerously unqualified. There needs, like, maybe he needs to be impeached. Like, he is really, really, he was the number one concern, even over like Kash Patel for me. Like, because this man can get people killed, and not just people killed by the hundreds, people killed by the millions. He is really a dangerous person. Not dangerous because he wants to kill people, not dangerous because he's trying to. Dangerous because he thinks he's protecting them and then killing them with his ignorance. RFK Jr. is one of the most dangerous men in America. And because he's been empowered with things he should not be empowered with. So this is his a little history of his. He the measles outbreak in 2019. Kennedy traveled to Samoa to discourage measles vaccine. There's a measles outbreak in Samoa, and he goes over there to say, "Don't get vaccinated." The outbreak killed 83 people, mostly children. This is what I mean. When the same thing happened in Texas, he's like, "Take vitamin A and cod liver oil." This showed, before he was ever Secretary of Health and Human Services, that this was way he was going to handle these sorts of things. He's founded and led anti-vax organization until 2023. Organization continues to run massive anti-vax propaganda machine supporting his DHHS policies. And this is not like real science. This is not like the other side. This isn't like a legitimate scientific view. This is junk science. Read about it. It's all junk science. All this stuff about mercury and blah, blah, blah is just junk science. The whole link came from a guy, what's his name? Hang on. Andrew Wakefield. Whole thing started with this guy named Andrew Wakefield. Andrew Wakefield was hired by lawyers to come up with a study that proved that vaccines were bad. So he fabricated, and I don't mean fabricated in some sort of hyperbolic sense. I mean, he literally fabricated results. He made up results. And this is still the backbone of all of this anti-vax stuff, is something that this one guy that made up stuff for and got paid like 50,000 pounds. This was in England, for a fake study that he didn't do because it was fake. And then there was like, oh, and he had, talked about, these were kids that didn't have autism, and then they got vaccinated, and then they had autism. And it was like, some of them had autism before they got vaccinated. I mean, it was just a completely bogus report. But this is the basis for the entire anti-vax movement, of which RFK Jr. has become the champion, and for which Children are dying in America under his rule or under his instruction, under his whatever you want to call his reign of terror as Secretary of Health and Human Services. He is not in any way qualified to do this job. He is inept, he is incompetent, and he is dangerous. And his danger is not his intent, his danger is his incompetence. And it's even worse than incompetence because it's incompetence that he thinks is knowledge. He thinks he's the one that really knows what's going on. There's nothing so irritating as talking with somebody who thinks that they know everything and they know nothing. And you actually know what you're talking about. Like, I wrote about basketball for like 15 years. I would watch basketball for 12 hours a day and write about basketball for 12 hours a day. I knew I like actually read the players agreement. The contract, like the entire thing from top to bottom. I knew the entire roster of every single team. And I'd have people write or like send me a DM saying, "Oh, here's a trade. What do you think of this trade?" And it would be the most ridiculous trade. There is no way that, I'll send you my 4 worst players for your best player and you get 4 and I get 1. And it works out with the salary cap. As though the other team would want to do that. And I would just be like, this is ridiculous. There's no way the other team would do it. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, you just don't like it because it's not your idea, And it's like, no, I actually understand what I'm talking about. Fake trades, I hated fake trades. I get so many of these things. Anyway, my point is, sometimes people do know what they're talking about, and when you really know what you're talking about, and somebody thinks they know what they're talking about, it's even more frustrating. It's even more annoying. Think about whatever you do for a living. Whether you're a painter or a plumber or a brain surgeon or a teacher, you're doing it for a living means you kind of know something about it. Like you actually understand it. And imagine that you're now sitting there and you're having dinner with somebody and it's like not really a friend of yours. It's just like this person that, is somebody brought over their new boyfriend or whatever, and you're having dinner together and they're telling you about, like how to thread a pipe and you're a plumber. And what they're telling you is just completely wrong. You can either correct them, you can politely listen to them, but you're not going to be convinced by them. And if I told you, well, you should have an open mind, and you're like, they're suggesting that we make pipes out of cardboard, like there's some things where enough to know there's no point in having an open mind about this. Like, this is so stupid, it's not worth discussing. And that's where the anti-vax crowd is. What the anti-vax crowd says is so far away from science, it's not even worth having a discussion. And instead, we have those people not only in charge, but those are the people that are saying this is what the science is. And so now you've got the AIs that are all saying, okay, the really, really stupid thing is the right thing, and the right thing is the really, really stupid thing. That's the danger. So even if somebody doesn't know what they're talking about, doesn't know about this, and wants to do some honest research, and so they go and they, go to Grok or whatever, or Claude. Actually, Claude's a little better than most, but they can go and they can Google, they can ask the AI for it, and the AI can give them the wrong advice because it's what the CDC says. That's the danger. You could get honest people actually looking for the truth to get lies and be told that the thing that is true is a lie. And that's how you end up with children dying of measles in Texas in the year 2025, a full 10 years after nobody had died. It's due to incompetence. But not just incompetence being presented as truth. So, okay, anyway. That's it for today, I think. Thanks for sticking with me through all that. And they're having the vote on the Epstein files right now. And so far it's 172 yes and no no's. So I think we're going to make that. It'll be interesting to see if any Republicans have the gumption to vote against it. All right. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Appreciate you listening.